The Linux Action Show is created by Jupiter Broadcasting. It's sponsored by Ting. Go to last.ting.com to save off your first device or plan, and DigitalOcean. Go over to DigitalOcean.com and use our promo code LASTDigital, and then you can spin up your own Linux rig for free. Welcome to Linux Action Show, episode 366. My name is Chris.
My name is Noah.
Hey, Noah, good morning. Guess what? Big show today. Joining us on the show is the lead developer of Bodhi Linux, a really interesting distribution based on Ubuntu that showcases the Enlightenment desktop in a way you've maybe never seen it before. So Jeff's going to join us and talk about that. Also, the challenges he might face as Ubuntu transitions to snappy packages and a transaction base. He's going to talk about that and where that could lead and the potential benefits for his distribution. And then, speaking of Canonical, in the news segment, Mark Shuttleworth says they might go IPO. Well, what is an IPO and what would that mean for the future desktop of Ubuntu? We'll talk about that. Plus, Firefox OS has some major plans changing for their mobile phones, and there's some also maybe upsetting news for Firefox web users. We'll discuss what all of that's about, plus Intel's new Linux distribution, the feedback, and of course, our picks.
Our picks?
Huge. I mean, I love it, Noah. And so I wanted to start with the Runs Linux this week because it really showcased how a community member in our subreddit can seriously hook us up with a really awesome Runs Linux. Like, he went out and did some research for this. He got the video clip for it. It came in by George Chalkins, I think is how you say his name, or Chalk Kits. And it is a really cool Runs Linux. The Hunt for Gravitational Waves Runs Linux. And this one was so neat that after I watched this video, I was inspired to find out what the Hunt for Gravitational Waves is and why it is actually going to be a huge, huge scientific breakthrough. It's going to give science essentially another sense out into space. They're going to be able to watch how gravity affects atoms and they bob in and out of the universe, as sort of like the way they can look at UV light and things like that. This project is attempting to do that, and they're using Linux to make it all happen. Now, Noah, if you are a keen observer and you look at the screenshot I'm about to show you, you may notice an iMac in that shot. Are you seeing that? You see that iMac in there?
You don't need to have a keen shot to notice that ugly thing sitting in the...
It's right there. In fact, there's a couple behind him, too. No, I have good news about the operating system that runs on those very iMacs. I'll play this video for you, and you keep an eye out for the Linux. It's one of these time lapses that are moving through the area, working through the research, getting the data all set up. A couple of shots of the crew here. Now, Apple keyboard, Apple mouse, looks like a MacBook right there. But then what OS is it that's running on that iMac right there? Looks like Ubuntu right there. Looks like Ubuntu.
I see Ubuntu.
So they've loaded, and there it is on the iMac. I don't know if you saw that shot there, and there's another iMac running it. They've loaded Ubuntu on their iMacs. It might even be the Mate desktop, or at least the GNOME 2 variant. Look at all those iMacs are running Ubuntu, and all of those screens up there are running Ubuntu.
I say Unity.
You think?
I don't see anything Unity specific. I don't see anything Unity specific, but usually when you install the Mate desktop, you get a different wallpaper, don't you?
I don't know. I guess so. That is a good point.
That
Maybe
looks
they
like
just have
the
a bottom
default wallpaper for
I actually was so impressed by this that I went and looked up at the article over at The Guardian that he links to, and basically, if you're curious about this, the scientists hope to have a breakthrough in January 2017, and they say it's the equivalent of astronomers discovering a whole new sense with telescopes that can already see the universe. By detecting gravitational waves, they'll be able to listen to the universe. They'll be able to hear stars colliding with one another, the destruction of matter falling into black holes, and the catastrophic detonation of distant massive stars. They can be thought of as wave motions that ripple across the universe, causing atoms to bob like boats on a choppy ocean. And the difficulty in detecting them comes from the size of the displacement, which is much smaller than the width of an atom. And so they got Linux loaded up on all of these rigs, chewing through all of this. And there is a TEDx talk linked in the Guardian article that talks more about gravitational wave astronomy. I don't know, Noah. Something about Linux powering us to discover a new sense to search out the universe from our home base. It's pretty cool.
It is, and you have to think it's yet again another just one other time where when you have to have something that has to be super reliable and super robust and super powerful, they don't go to Mac, they don't go to Windows. They go to Linux.
And
I guess at some point you just kind of stop being surprised about it, right? Like, well, that would if I were to ask, I would say, what do you think the prominent operating system that powers a lot of NASA stuff? I mean, what would your guess be? That's just not so uncommon anymore.
Yeah, that is true. It is not super uncommon. But here's where I think where I was surprised, and then we can move on. It's not a huge deal, but the fact that so I was looking at those machines, they look like older iMacs, some of the earlier Intel iMacs, and what I love that they did there is I think they loaded a Mate or an older low resources version of Ubuntu, and they're getting life out of these super expensive machines they bought for research. That maybe back in the day there was Mac OS only specific software they needed, and so they loaded these Macs, they bought these Macs, they paid a ton of money, a premium to get iMacs with large screens and big hard drives and lots of memory, but by today's standards, they might not even be able to install Yosemite on them anymore. So they can put Linux on there and continue to just crunch these huge numbers, make these breakthrough discoveries, and not really worry about getting their latest version from the Mac App Store, but instead just use Linux. And I love that about it. And I love that somewhere in the background in January 2017, if we hear a major breakthrough, we'll remember that was done on Linux. It's pretty neat.
Right.
I'll tell you about another major breakthrough. That's right. It's our first sponsor, DigitalOcean. Head over to DigitalOcean.com right now. In fact, if you're over at DigitalOcean, you should probably use our promo code of Absolute Power, and that is LAST Digital, LAS Digital, one word, lowercase, and that's going to give you a $10 credit over at DigitalOcean. Wait a minute. You don't know what DigitalOcean is? You don't? That's like one of the coolest public use cases of Linux right there on the web. DigitalOcean is a success story because they've built their system around Linux. They're able to go in and so it was several things, I think, for DigitalOcean. It was the fact that they based it around SSDs. I think that was super insightful because when they originally got the company rolling and got that set up, that was a big bet. So that was pretty insightful. Then they really chose the best data centers possible. So they spent some money up front to make that right. When it came to the software stack, there's a lot of ways that could have gone back then. It wasn't like a huge leap to go with KVM, but it was definitely not a proven virtualizer back then. It had a really good potential, but because DigitalOcean has the insights into the community, they work in there. And you know what? The thing is that is even true today. Like when they roll out new distributions, they work directly with those distributions to get updates right to them. Like when they rolled out FreeBSD, they worked with the FreeBSD community. They really understand the community. So they saw where KVM was going, and they knew Linux was the sure bet. So they based their entire enterprise on that, and then they wrapped it around the incredible DigitalOcean experience. Look at this dashboard. Go over to DigitalOcean.com and look at the demo of their dashboard. It's so intuitive and so simple. And I love everything can be done in your browser, on your mobile or on your desktop, even getting console access to your droplet. They have an HTML5 console that they've written Go that's embedded in your web browser, and you can watch it from post all the way up to login. I love it. Go over to DigitalOcean. You can get started in less than 55 seconds, and pricing plans start at only $5 a month. That'll get you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, one CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. Go seed your favorite distribution towards the end of the month. I mean, it's just crazy, a terabyte of transfer. And if you use the promo code LASTDigital, you'll get a $10 credit. I love this. I love making Linux its absolute best. I love taking something that used to be a massive endeavor that clients would pay me a lot of money to set up, and now it is as simple as getting started in less than 55 seconds. No, as somebody who's rolling out services for clients all the time, DigitalOcean's got to be a lifesaver for you.
Yeah, and the thing is, the way that DigitalOcean has the way they have it set up is I can build a server that we roll out for different clients. So, for example, we do some work in the medical industry. And so we have an EMR solution that's set up. Well, rather than, I can create the droplet easily enough, but rather than having to install the software stack on top of it and then make all the tweaks we want, we have the entire EMR stack ready to go. And all I have to do then is drop their data in there and then create their users and they're good to go. And if they're migrating, I literally copy the folder over and start the program up and it runs. And you were watching, one of the first episodes we ever did of LAS in studio. I had a problem with my mail server, and it was the same thing where I took the program file, I moved it over to DigitalOcean because I already had the basics set up, and then created a customized droplet that had all of my software on it. And that's one of those things that that wasn't possible, 5-7 years ago. We couldn't do stuff like that.
And not with this UI, not with this elegancy, and not with also I love being able to send droplets to other DigitalOcean accounts, which is great for client handoffs. So if you're just doing tech support with somebody. And something else I wanted to mention is DigitalOcean is hiring Linux sysadmins, and they specifically want me to plug that because they know that the JB audience is the sharpest audience out there for this stuff. So you guys are getting the first heads up on this. They have a careers page over at DigitalOcean. Specifically, they're hiring all kinds of positions, but they wanted me to plug Linux sysadmins and technical writers. They have positions open for that, including if you just want to write for them, and they'll pay. I think they used to do up to $200 for really good submissions. So go over to DigitalOcean and check all of that out: the careers, the writing positions, and remember our promo code LastDigital, so that way you can try out a Droplet 2 months for free for $10. You'll get a $10 credit, and you can apply that to your account after you've made the account. So if you forget to use the promo code, just log back into your account and use the promo code LastDigital. You get the $10 credit, and you'll just get to try the $5 rig out for 2 months. I love it. I mean, it's such a great system. I think if I was still doing IT contracting like you do today, this would be a total game changer for me. It'd just be an absolute game changer.
And I've recently, I know that I'm late to the game on this, but with their API, they have the digital swimmer, or I think that's what's called, swimmer. Yeah. And so I have it on my phone. Yep. Now I can keep an eye on my droplets.
Yeah, I've got a couple. I've actually, there's a couple of different community-made apps that are really good because the API rocks. And so DO Swimmer, DO Swimmer is the one I'm using right now too. I like that one. And then you can actually create a virtual machine from your phone.
Right.
It blows my mind. All right, DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code LastDigital. Thank you, DigitalOcean. Thank you, Rikai, for our desktop app pick this week. This one was submitted by Rikai and editor of the show, so we have to go with that because otherwise he'll probably just edit in regardless.
Exactly. That's actually what I told him. I don't know if you saw. I don't know.
No,
if it was
I didn't see that. No, I didn't.
So he goes here. I have an app pick for you, and I said, so I suppose I don't have I don't have a choice.
Really?
To use it because if we don't use it, then you'll just put it in anyway, and then we'll just look like a bunch of yahoos talking about some other app.
I guess so.
But it's language tool, and I don't know if you had a chance to look at it in depth, but essentially what it does is it automates proofreading. So I tried to install the plugin for LibreOffice, and I was unsuccessful. It didn't quite work. It supposedly you could have, so you can type your document in LibreOffice and then activate this plugin, and then it will proofread your text. Now I did have success installing the Firefox add-on, which is super helpful because you know those internet arguments that you get in that you always kind of wished, that
and then they catch you up on grammar instead of like what you actually said,
Which, by the way, pro tip: once they start correcting your grammar, that means you've won the argument. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so the Firefox ad worked very well, I might add. And then the standalone run version, while it technically worked, I was a little bit concerned because I just don't see myself firing up a separate program, copying text into it.
You know what you need, dude? You know what you need? Check this out. They have a Vim plugin, so you have Quake terminal running all the time with Vim. You just go in there, type in what you need, and run it, and you're good to go.
See, I don't even see myself doing that. I'm not going to open up another program. I think it needs to be integrated, much like spell check.
So they've got Mozilla Thunderbird integration. They've got like you mentioned, Firefox, LibreOffice. And this is like a language tool on steroids, way better than what's built into like your LibreOffice type program and stuff like that.
Very much so, much so. And so I played with it. It's definitely something that I'm going to work a little harder to get it in working with LibreOffice. I suspect it's just a versioning difference, but if and when I can get it to work, I imagine this is going to become one of those must-have tools. Like once I redo my computer, it's going to be one of the first things that are back on there because I'm not a terribly good writer to begin with, and right now I was using other tools to kind of accomplish the same thing. And from judged on my usage in Firefox, I only used it a couple days. I had a busy week, but based on my use, it is amazing, and it does an excellent job. And I think it's going to become one of those staples that I'm going to use nonstop.
Well, for you Arch fans, there is the language tool extension for LibreOffice, OpenOffice, and Vim are all in the AUR. So I would bet language tool itself is probably in the package repo. Let me see. We'll do a little package search for it. If it is, I could give it an install and give it a go because, man, heavens knows I could use the tool. Yeah, it's in the Arch repo. I'll install it right now and launch it because, I'm so bad, Noah. I could even use this before I send out a tweet. I could run my...
Yeah.
Although I don't know how I would handle Twitter verbiage, but let's see. All right, so I'm giving it a launch. It looks like the program itself is about 70 megabytes. So 70 megabyte download, and then about 145 megabytes once it's installed. But thankfully, we have a pretty fast connection here, so that's already downloaded and installed. And it looks like it needs... It needs the Java runtime for the GUI version. So if you want the command line version, you don't need Java, but and I don't have Java runtime. Wow, Noah, I don't have multilib turned on, so I'm not gonna. So let's see here. Now let's see. Can I run it without? And oops. Survey says no. since I don't have Java installed, I don't get the GUI. So you might need that. That could still be a thing. But I have it on the command line at least. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, play with it a little bit. Like I said, I think really for me to be useful.
I got it. Hold on, I'm sorry.
Really?
Not to interrupt you, but I'm sorry. I did get it, actually. I'm full of crap. You don't need Java to get the GUI going.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is. It just looks really bad.
Do you see yourself opening up a separate tool just to, I mean, I don't know. I just don't see it. Just not me.
You know what you know how I would integrate this is I would just leave it running all the time. And I actually I do sometimes prefer to compose things in gedit and then paste them into like Telegram or Twitter. So I could just use this instead. And then just run it through
I can't say I've ever composed anything in gedit. I have composed things in LibreOffice and then pasted them into Telegram, but that's to correct my horrendous spelling. So I've done that, but again, if with a little bit of tweaking, how much work do you think it would be, or how long do you think it'll be before a tool like this becomes part of the system, and then everywhere I write text, perhaps I can have that plugin and it will integrate with any app.
Yeah, very, very, very likely. More and more people will integrate it if it takes off. So that is Language Tool, and you can find it at languagetool.org. And Noah, it is now time to give a little love to a open source project. And those of you who like Armorock but want something in the web might really like Groove Basin. Groove Basin is a music player server with a web-based user interface inspired by Armorock 1.4, the older version. It runs on a server, and you just have them, go to a client with connected to some speakers and listen to your dang music. It's got a responsive UI, dynamic playlist mode, drag and drop upload from your desktop, MPD protocol support, streaming support, so that we don't have to download the files locally, and it also supports Last.fm, scrobbling, and crap like that. So have you checked out the web UI of this bad Mamma Jamma?
Yeah. So they have a demo that you can take a look at. Now, this is, again, much like, actually probably more to an extent, even more so than Language Tool. This is definitely something that's going to have a permanent place in my heart and in my home. Numerous times, in fact, almost every time I get a gathering of more than 4 or 5 people in the house, inevitably it comes up where somebody says, "Hey, do you have anywhere I can plug in my phone? I want to show you this song. I want to play this. I want to do this." No. This solves that problem.
Yeah,
because essentially, I would put that server, I would let it run access on my guest network, and let them log in. I can choose the music that goes into that base, so that they can log in and then say, "Well, I want to play this song or I want to play that song," and then I can tie that into my whole house audio.
Yes.
So it plays everywhere in the house. It plays out by the grill, that kind of thing. I can change the songs from my phone while I'm standing outside grilling.
Yes, and if you want, it comes with stream URLs, so you can have it'll automatically generate. So right here, this is created a IceCast stream for me automatically. That's where that music is coming from Groove Basin. So anything that supports IceCast, which is any web browser, can stream from this thing. The other thing that's really cool about it is people that are at your house could upload to it. If you allow them, they can upload their own tracks, and they can download tracks from it. It also has a pretty cool auto DJ mode. So if you combine auto DJ mode with the stream URL, you essentially get yourself a really quick and dirty internet radio stream. It's look, I'm streaming music from this demo right now.
And I'll tell you what, there's another thing too, and this actually might kind of piss you off, but I love it. They explicitly say on their website, Groove Basin will work with your personal music library, not an external music service. Groove Basin will never support DRM content. I love the fact that they are very upfront that we are not going to do Spotify or Pandora. No, none of that. You put your music on there and you stream it. And I like owning all my music. I like having the actual files, and I like not having to deal with the issues that you run into with streaming.
I already have them all on an NFS share in my house, and I have an Archbox sitting in front of that NFS mount that can just run this really easily. And the other thing I like about it, just if you prefer this with your own music player, because you'd have to keep this in a tab or make it a standalone web app, it does support all keyboard controls. So everything's hotkeyable. You don't have to click and point the entire time. So it really brings if you're looking for a whole house media streaming solution, you're not happy that Subsonic went licensed and pay. You don't want to set up a whole Plex server just to do music, and you'd prefer to have something that's open source that works with a hell of a lot of devices. Anything that supports an MP3 stream is going to work with this. Groove Basin is a great way to go. It's free. It's open source. The code's up on GitHub, and you can check it out. The URL to grab this is at groovebasin.com. Basin.com. Really nice. Really nice. Really nice. I really like this. I think I want to set this up at the studio.
Yeah, yeah. So that would solve the issue, right? When we were there on whatever it was, Tuesday, Wednesday, we were doing card night, and hey, listen, all we wanted to do was play music, and then there was like the 7 songs or whatever that the fire could see.
Yeah.
That got really old, and it's like if we had this, that would have totally solved that problem.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, I just want to mention really quick, because there's a few things coming up. Meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. Southeast Linux Fest. We already have the meetup set for there. That's June 12th. Friday, June 12th. If you're going to go to Southeast Linux Fest, go to meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcast, and you can say hey to Noah and Mr. Sis, and probably Rotten Corp is going to make it down there too. I won't be making it, but most of the crew will be, and Noah will be down there. Are you going to stream live from Self? Is that the plan?
Do you think we're going to stream live from Self, Mr. Chris?
I think
we are not only going to stream live from Self, we are going to stream live on a custom-built Linux broadcasting rig that we started we started in Washington and continued to work on while we were here.
Yeah.
And now we've got it perfected, and we've got there's everything is kind of fine-tuned and finely honed, and I
think it's ready for production?
Well, it's totally ready for production. The only thing I am missing is, do you know how bad, like so badly, I want to get one of those wireless HDMI transmitters and get a GoPro on a DJI Phantom, and I don't know if I can financially do it. I don't know if I can feasibly do it. I don't know if I can do it without pissing off Jeremy. But if I can somehow finagle all those things, I would love to open up our live coverage of Self with a drone shot of a Phantom
Jeremy
flying
will totally let you
down
do
the
it,
hall.
man. Just keep it on the DL and don't say it on air, and we'll be fine.
No, yeah. He's kind of guy that would kind of go for the stuff like that, though.
Meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. So meet up with Noah and the crew itself, and then BSD Can will be going on the same weekend up in Canada, and Alan and Chris Moore will be there, and we'll have a meetup set up for that soon as well, and other events all over the world, not just local events. Meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. And if we got enough people there, I'd be willing to hand over some management of that to the community to set up their own local events. If you guys just want to get up and to get together to chat about Linux, so that's Meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. But no, with the Pixel done, let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com. Go to last.ting.com. That will give you our new higher special promo price, which I'll tell you about in just a second. Give you the nice discount, but also, more importantly, it keeps the show going. Let's be honest. The show is a little support for the Linux Action Show, last.ting.com. Here's what they're doing, though. This is really exciting, Noah. Brace your brain for this. When you go to last.ting.com, you're going to get $50 off your first Ting device.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I know. And if you got a Ting compatible device, you get $50 of service credits. What's up? It only lasts till the end of June. So jump on this, because Ting is hardcore rocking these days. I'm going to tell you about another update they just did to their website that is great for us customers, but probably the bigger picture stuff is they spent a year investing in the CDMA network. So their CDMA partner has built out their network to a tune of like $400 million in the last few years. So they really built out the CDMA network recently. And then, starting the beginning of this year, they brought on a GSM network. So now on the Ting network, you get GSM or CDMA to choose from, which means there's a lot of devices you can bring. But the other nice advantage of that is, depending on your area, you can pick which one is stronger. Like the devices like the Nexus 6 and Nexus 5, you can just swap out over to CDMA or Ting, or CDMA or GSM. That's really nice. But here's the sweet sauce. With Ting, you only pay for what you use. They just take your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes. Whatever bucket you fall into, that's what you pay. It's a flat $6 for the line, and then you just pay your usage. And it's any applicable taxes, of course. And the nice thing about this is you can have multiple devices, and you don't have to have like a default, $40 per line. I'm going to have to pay $40 for the data on this. It's just, I have a couple of phones, whichever phone I use, that's how I pay for it. Plus, they have no contracts and no early termination fees. So you don't have to worry about being stuck in anything, and all of the phones they sell are unlocked. Are you starting to get it? Are you starting to get how Ting's a little bit different? Even there's other companies out there that they think they can put on a leather jacket and say things that you like to hear and give you free Spotify, and all of a sudden they're hip and they're changing the industry, when in reality they're just in a tough spot and they're trying to respond the best they can. And they can't really change it up to the degree Ting can. But the Ting model works like nobody else. First of all, Ting's an MVNO. That gives them the flexibility to move around to the networks that give them the best deals, also the best coverage combinations and flexibility. Then they can wholesale those prices directly onto you. So that's why you're only paying for your usage. The other guys, they can't touch that model. That's just not how they're built, so they can't compete at the same level that Ting can compete at. Then, to really give a lot of value on top of that, Ting has no-hold customer service. You call them at 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. or 8 p.m., and a real human being answers the phone. That's value those other guys can't afford to bring you. And then on top of that, they have the best website in the industry to manage all of this. Everything from just checking your usage to deleting and activating devices. And in fact, Ting just recently revved their self-help site and gave it a nice makeover at help.ting.com to give even more resources and tools to customers like me. Now, I've been a Ting customer for over 2 years, and as a Ting customer for 2 years, I've saved over $2,000. Go to last.ting.com, use their savings calculator, and see how much you could save. No contracts, pay for what you use, unlocked phones, helping make a difference in the mobile industry. Are you getting it? This is Ting, last.ting.com. And by the way, remember that $50 service credit? Seriously consider this. The Netgear Zing. It is an LTE Wi-Fi hotspot that is no contract, and you only pay for what you use. And if you go to last.ting.com, if it goes from $164 down to $114, and then it's no contract, it's a $6 hotspot. And you just turn it on when you need it. And if you don't even need it at all, you can turn it off. You don't even have to pay the $6, and you turn it back on. Ting lets you do that. There's all kinds of devices you can get, from feature phones to the Nexus 6 or whatever. But if you're a sysadmin, if you're in IT, if connectivity is super important to you, $6 a month to have LTE tri-band at your fingertips. And this is the one that has the OLED screen, so you get like how much battery life is left, your signal strength. You can manage your Wi-Fi password settings all right on the device. You don't have to like go to some crappy web UI to have the OLED touchscreen. And it's $114, no contract, $6 for the line, and then you just pay for your usage. Last.ting.com. Go check them out. That $50 service credit or discount off the device ends June 30th. Last.ting.com. I like that. I like that a lot. Noah, we should probably start with somebody that has a lot of ambition in the mobile industry. That would be Canonical and Mr. Mark Shuttleworth, who made quite a bit of news on the 21st, which I think was Thursday, when ZDNet had an exclusive interview with him where he said that he's considering taking Canonical public. IPO, initial public offering, would mean that they would be a public company with disclosing financials, having a board, all of these things, like Red Hat is and things like that. Noah, you kind of come at this more from an enterprise perspective, more from a Red Hat enterprise background. Does this seem like a slam dunk no-brainer to you, or do you worry about it changing Ubuntu?
Yeah, I don't like it at all. I mean, so you're right. Red Hat is a publicly traded company, and they've done very, very well. But Red Hat has also taken a real firm line in the stand to say, we're going to stay an open source company. We value these ideals, and that's probably why every Red Hat employee I see is actually using Red Hat or Fedora on their company issued ThinkPad, not a MacBook.
Well, I don't think I like the implication though that Canonical isn't an open source company, because the majority of what they produce, like everything they've done with Ubuntu Phone, the CLA exists, yes, but the code itself is open source.
Yeah, and I guess so. The thing that concerns me about Canonical is, I feel like Canonical can't decide which direction to focus down and go in it. I feel like they just change direction with the wind depending on what they think. And this is before they have the input of a board. This is while they're still a privately owned company.
Well, let me pause you right there, because this is where I want to pick it up. And this is why I think this actually might be a good thing. Because what you just said is exactly the kind of behavior that would end when they become a public company. Two things have to happen. Canonical, I don't know what their financial situation is, but they're probably not making billions. So their big offering isn't going to be that they're rich, right? Their big offering is Canonical has a really compelling story around Internet of Things, around cloud. These are the words they're going to use, right? Cloud and IoT. And the truth of the matter is, they actually do have a pretty compelling story, air quotes. And they will have to sort of be locked into that path, I think, sort of, when if they became a public company, because that is what's going to produce revenue. So I think, in a way, it's sort of Mark saying, in fact, maybe I grabbed a couple of quotes here from this article that kind of underscore this point. I think, so here's what he said. He said, the decision won't be entirely his. I need to talk it over with my Canonical team. He said that they've been seriously kicking it around internally for the last several months. What is prompting Shuttleworth to think about it is taking the public taking the company public, is we now have a story, he says, that the market can better understand. And I agree, they do. Like, you can wrap your head around what is Ubuntu, what is its value. It's kicking ass in the cloud. They've got this new transactional system that Microsoft and GE and Asus have all said they're going to partner with Canonical to use Ubuntu on their Internet of Things devices, whatever the hell those are. So, again, but to Wall Street, right? To Wall Street, that's starting to make sense. Mark goes on to say, so much is moving to the cloud. Machine learning, platform as a service, and big data are all flying on Ubuntu. The Internet of Things will be the defining technology story of our time. Machine intelligence will move on the edge with Ubuntu and through our apps store. While this is totally embryonic, it's coming in and it fits well with our cloud vision. In short, Canonical may be looking to the cloud for profits, but the company will not be abandoning, goes on from the article, not Mark's quote, the company will not be abandoning its efforts in Internet of Things, smartphones, or the desktop, which is best known in Linux circles. So this might give them the very stability you're talking about.
I don't know. To me, it sounds like you are. To me, it sounds like you are cementing the instability. Nowhere in that article does it say we started by making a desktop operating system, and we've continued with the desktop operating system, and because it made sense to strip out the desktop part of the desktop operating system and hold that 5-year LTS and use that as a server operating system, which has worked very well for us. I feel like we're going to cement this idea that we have to continue on by running Ubuntu on everything imaginable that's connected. And I don't think that is a good fit for. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I mean, I don't know.
Think about this though. But if you could come to the market with, I mean, Mark and team are super, super good at really selling the idea around something, and making people understand the idea of convergence, making people understand the idea of Ubuntu TV, making people really even understand using things like Ubuntu in a cloud instance and managing with Juju. Like, even though it's a complicated topic, they can even pretty successfully communicate that. When I think about that, and I think about how this kind of has remained their sweet spot for years, I think I would be motivated to maybe even buy stock. Like, I don't know if I actually would, A, for it, or B, if that would be a conflict of interest, but like, I think they have a shot at this. I think if they found something that worked for them and they had to go public like this and they have a board and they're on the line like this, I think this could line them up to be a really successful company because they do have a pretty good head start on this really popular, fast and growing segment of devices.
So where does the money come from? Because it's not because the reality is I still am yet to be sold that Canonical is going to penetrate the mobile market. I think that if you're a device manufacturer and you're making a small portable mobile device, you're still going with Android. And there's certainly not enough investment in the desktop for them to make a significant amount of money there. So if you're a potential investor, where are you getting your returns from?
Well, you know what is it's got to be the answer to that is maybe they're going to have support contracts and licensing, and when an OEM buys the Ubuntu phone, they contract with Canonical to customize it and bring in their own brandings and customizations. And when a vendor like Acer or Asus or GE deploys a refrigerator running Ubuntu Snappy, I would assume GE is taking out a fairly lucrative contract with Canonical to provide support for that. That's where the money will come from, and nowhere in there did I say desktop.
Yeah. So everything about what you just said doesn't. It makes me nothing about that. It makes me happy because one, if I'm an investor, I'm sitting back and I'm going, listen. Every device I've seen, at least if I know what I'm talking about, every device I've seen that's embedded lately is shipping with Android. I mean, for crying out loud, the cars are going to standardize the infotainment system on Android. So Android is to break that market is I think is a bit of a pipe dream.
It seems like a foregone conclusion.
So, and then to add to that, now you're saying that if by some miracle that succeeds, what we wind up with is a bastardized version of the original operating system that is catered towards the carriers in the sense of smartphones. That makes me even less happy. So I mean, unless I'm missing something here, I'm just not seeing how this works out well for us as specifically as desktop Linux users.
Well, I'll tell you this. I think the jury's out on that. if they were really had a complete vision, I think the desktop still has to remain part of it, because you need to have those developers that are writing applications for servers, for the cloud. You need to have them developing it on Ubuntu. People that are creating Docker images, they need to be developing those on Ubuntu. People creating games for SteamOS probably need to be running Ubuntu desktop. So there's still a market need for that doesn't, without them having a presence there, makes their other products less compelling. So I think they're somewhat motivated to keep the desktop going and make it a good product, and they have to bring it in line with the snappy and the transactional stuff, so it's less work for them, which will probably end up making a better, more stable product in the long run, I suspect. What I worry about is, to me, this shows, it's good and bad, and then we can probably move on, but this shows to me how nimble Canonical is. Like, this to me
true.
sounds like a pivot of the focus of the entire company that they're willing to consider, even though they haven't really had anything hit the market yet for the phone or the Internet of Things device. The BQ device is shipped, and the M4 is now being able to order. But in terms of scale, with user adoption and generating revenue, like, they don't have a product out there that's generating a lot of revenue that some companies would be like, well, this is where our money's coming from now. Let's go this direction. Mark, maybe to his credit, is able to, he's looking at desktop, he's looking at server, he's looking at mobile, and he's looking at Internet of Things, and he's like, I even though right now my money's coming mostly from over here, I think it's going to be coming from over here, and even though I'm only a couple of months into this, or a year at most, I'm going to pivot the whole company and maybe even go IPO and take the company in a whole new direction. That's both scary because this company that we're also dependent on is really flexible, but at the same time, it shows that they're not going to get stagnant and let the market pass them by. So
I don't think anyone could ever accuse Canonical of being a company that's unwilling to change or unwilling to listen to what the market is telling them or what their audience is telling them or what that has never been a complaint of mine of Canonical. I think you're right. I think they're very good of pivoting on a dime when they think that the market is demanding it. So they see this change and they say, listen, it seems like mobile is the next thing. We're going to go into mobile. That part is true. But I guess I see Linux distributions in particular succeed when they are highly focused and highly concentrated on one thing and don't try to do the let's do everything.
Well, and isn't that interesting in the contrast with our interview with Jeff coming up in just a little bit? A super focused distribution, really trying to make Enlightenment the best desktop possible based on Ubuntu, but yet they're taking that focus to the next level. So it's exactly what you're talking about. Perfect contrast for this story. Let's move on. Let's do a quick news story, and then we'll get into some more stuff, just to kind of get the pace picked back up. Those of us who are using high DPI displays like the XPS 13 can rejoice because Chrome, as just the stable version of Chrome and Chromium, are now shipping with high DPI support. Full menus, URL bar, the web page, and also, sort of unrelated but same in timing, WebGTK Plus just got another update this week that sort of rounds off its high DPI support. So there are now 2 WebKit-based browsers, or maybe Blink-based browsers, on the Linux desktop that it looks so amazing. I can't, there's no way for me to show it to you unless I was recording this on a high DPI. There's no way for me to show it to you, but my God, Noah, when I now have a situation under Linux now where GNOME 3 is high DPI and my main application I use the most, Terminal and Chrome, are high DPI. And Noah, it looks so good. It looks, I can't, there's only way I can explain it is my Linux desktop looks super high end. It looks super high end. Like it looks like it should be like a $3,000 computer. It is so amazing. I'm so happy Chrome has high DPI to support now, and the performance is way better because I'm no longer zooming my web pages up 200%. They're at 100%. So everything is getting to be bit by bit by bit better and better for high DPI users under Linux, and this was a major update if you're a Chrome user. And so I'm going to keep watching the high DPI support. I'm also testing it under KDE to give my experiences there, but I'm really happy if you're a Chrome user or like a Midori or a GNOME web user. Definitely get the latest version. It's super worth it. Now, I'm not so sure about the next Firefox version, Noah.
Well, so Firefox does have pixel scaling. So if you go into,
not that. I'm not. That's not what I'm worried about. Oh yeah, go ahead though.
I'm just saying, if Firefox is usable on a high DPI display, with one simple tweak, you go into about.config and just change that pixel scaling into 2, and the web browser becomes usable. Up until now, there's been no reasonable way for me to use Chrome on my Pixel. It just didn't work at all because everything was so small.
They're both doing the zoom trick, right? Where this is now native high DPI support.
I guess, but the problem was in Firefox, if then I have to essentially scroll every new tab that I open, the nice thing about changing that pixel scaling is when I hit Control 0 to go to zero everything out, make everything normal, everything is a normal size. It's still not super, super tiny. Whereas if I'm zooming in on every tab or every new window, everything gets all out of whack.
Yeah.
Which I didn't like.
Try out Chrome now next time. So this is actually what I was referencing to. Mozilla is going to roll out suggested tiles to Firefox beta users next week, and then all users this summer. And these suggested tiles, we kind of talked about them a little bit before. They will push recommendations to users' new tab page based on the sites they have previously visited, and it's hitting the beta channel now. The company said that it'll also be hitting the Android version soon. I'm going to play a little bit of this video just so we kind of have an idea of what it's about. And then we'll talk about this, because this is probably going to upset some people on the internet, I would imagine, being in the internet.
With that commercial development comes many benefits. The balancing public benefit with commercial profit is crucial, because the internet is a global resource. Keeping this in mind, one area that needs better balance is digital advertising. As the medium has evolved, personal data and information has been collected and then shared with third parties across the internet without the user even knowing. And despite being intrusive, these practices merely target audiences rather than engage users, thereby leading to a lack of transparency in what's going on for both the user and the advertiser. But it doesn't have to be this way. We believe new marketing channels can exist where brands begin to participate in unique and trustworthy conversations with customers. This belief is what led us to develop suggested tiles.
So their pitch here, I did not expect this because I haven't watched this video yet. So their pitch here is, let us do the advertising because you can trust us, instead of having the websites do the advertising.
Yeah, you know what I think, Chris? I think it's ridiculous and pathetic that they have to go and craft this video to get us as free users of a web browser, of a world-class web browser, just so that we don't get upset that they need to make a couple bucks to fund the development and ongoing operations of Mozilla. I think that's ridiculous.
Well,
when I open a new tab and they want to put some suggested tabs, tiles, that alone on a free web browser, so that they can fund their operations, that alone is enough to piss people off.
How are you going to feel when it's an Apple ad? One of their first partners.
I don't care. Here's the thing. When I open a new tab, first of all, there's a way to shut it off. You can go and you can say that don't put anything in my tab, just have a blank tab. So if it really bothers me that much, I'd shut it off. But you know what? Frankly, I don't care what's on the tab when I open it up, because I'm about to type in a URL. How many times do you open up your browser and stare at it and go, what website do I want to visit today? You open your web browser because you need to go to Google, or you need to go to, whatever. And when I open the tab up, I'm ready to type. I have half the URL types practically before the web browser has populated the screen.
These directory tiles are basically sponsored content. And so they're going to work with sponsors to populate these. And I think where people get upset is Firefox is supposed to represent the best of what the free web can be. Like a web that has no other baggage attached to it, no other strategy tax associated with it, no other ulterior motives associated with it. It is supposed to represent what the best of the internet can be if you use a free web browser and you follow standards and it's developed out in the open. And so for a lot of people, I think they worry that the sponsored version of Firefox is changing that direction a little bit, focusing less on freedom for the web and focusing a little more on building a competitive product with something that Google is making.
It is. And you know why that is? Because in that model you described, it relies heavily on if 1% or 10% of Firefox users contributed a dollar a month or whatever it is, they could probably get away without doing that. But the reality is we're just too cheap to do it. And not only are we too cheap to a lot of us are too cheap to contribute to these projects that we use every single day. But then on top of it, we want to complain when they want to put tiles in unpopulated web browser tabs that if it really bothers you, you can turn off. There is no way anyone's going to convince me that anyone has a legitimate right to be upset about this. I'm just not seeing it.
I agree. I mean, you got to be able to support the web browser. The Mozilla Foundation has initiatives they need to be able to finance and push forward. The only major concern I have here is maybe in the enterprise space, even like you said, it can be disabled, If it can't be disabled like through group policy or some sort of network-wide administration system, you might see system administrators opting not to use it because they're worried about tracking, even though, Mozilla is doing client-side filtering, trying to make this better for user privacy. It still might be something in enterprises where it just becomes that browser with ads. There's a possibility they could get labeled as that.
So, and again, I don't know enough about the internal workings of Firefox to know if this would work, but could you set up one browser and then just copy that Mozilla profile over to across the network?
You could probably create an installer that doesn't. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of ways to do it, but you could see.
Well, the reason is when you bring up the corporate thing, I could actually see that becoming an issue because they are particular on things like what bookmarks are on a default install. Yeah. I can only imagine that they're not going to be real happy if when the tab comes open, then certain things are being advertised.
Could you imagine if it was your competitor being advertised?
Yeah, I mean, so most of the places that I've worked with that have those kind of stringent requirements they specify when the web browser's open, this has to be the default, and this web page has to load by default. And I don't know how they're going to feel if a new tab is opened and then all of a sudden, like you said,
the content can change.
Yeah. So I could see that actually being an issue, but
it could even it could even be an issue if it becomes a task that the administrators have to take on when they set up a new workstation, and they might just say, we're just going to switch to Chrome.
It's not going to happen. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
There's no way that when I'm setting up 150, 200, 500 clients, if you think I'm going into every one of those clients and turning off a new tab, that's not going to happen. Yeah. But like I said, there's got to be a way to image that or push a change out globally. And if that happens, but that would be the one piece of legitimate criticism I could see is inside of a corporate environment that has these requirements. If there's no way to push it globally, I could see that being an issue.
My final thought on this is I totally understand why the Mozilla Foundation needs to do this. I want them to stick around for a very long time. I think Firefox is a great browser, and I would even be willing to donate. In fact, my contributions in the past is I have bought in Firefox swag every few years. So, like, one of my favorite bags that I had for years was a Firefox laptop bag, and I have a Firefox shirt, a Firefox polo, and stuff like that I've, that's been my contribution over the years, because it's really good swag, too. I worry that they're doing this when Chrome is still really strong. And it just got even better under Linux, plus WebGTK, it just got better under Linux. So there's a lot of really good other alternatives out there for users. So good luck to Mozilla.
One final thought. A way around that corporate thing would just be to have a corporate version of Firefox that costs $200. Or $100 or something like that. And if you did that and you could pay for the version, the same companies that I'm talking about that have these strict requirements, believe me when I tell you, they'd have no problem cutting a check to say if that's what we got to do to get this software, if it costs a couple thousand. The kind of company that's big enough to care about those minute little things, usually they're not going to have a problem. They expect to pay for software anyway. But as a person who sits down on his desktop and is able to install Firefox on every device I own at absolutely no required charge to me, I have zero problem if they can make some money about putting some suggested titles.
I might even click them just to help them out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right. So this is an interesting change of pace, though. Mozilla says it's giving up on its dream of a $25 Firefox smartphone. CNET reports that in an email to employees sent out Thursday, CEO Chris Beard made it clear, remember they got the new CEO, that the company will soon be changing its mobile strategy. We have not seen, this is a quote from the email, we have not seen sufficient traction for a $25 phone, Beard wrote. He went on to say that we will focus on efforts that provide a better user experience rather than focusing on cost alone. The company seems determined to produce enticing options across a broad range of phones. Mozilla is thinking about adding support for Android apps as another way of giving Firefox OS a boost. Beard hints it would be limited to key apps rather than allowing any or all Android apps onto the platform. So dropping the $25 phone, adding support for Android apps, is Mozilla's dream fading away? Are they going to be too mixed in with the competition now, Noah?
Yeah, it seems like that, right? Like, so what happens every time we talk about smartphones or Ubuntu Touch or Firefox OS? The first words out of my mouth are always, Mozilla has been very clear that they're developing a phone for developing worlds that don't necessarily require all the fun bells and whistles that we have here in the U.S. Yeah, right. That has always been their high focus, and I've always appreciated. And I've used the $25 phone, and it's very usable. So I'm super disappointed to see that they're giving that up, because I think it had a lot of potential. I think that if you live in Africa, in certain parts of Africa, and $25 is probably more than you can imagine to begin with. So on the other hand, as every other platform continues to move forward, and we get look at the advantages of HTML5 and where we've gone, first person shooting, gaming, and stuff like that. As all of this stuff begins to get more advanced, what is the purpose of a $25 smartphone if you can't use it with 90% of the existing ecosystem?
I'm really interested because I would be really surprised if they totally abandon the low end, because it seems like that is such a that is a Google can't even get down there with Android One, right? So, but I can understand why they're having a hard time. Noah, truth be told, I felt like Now, I don't know. I have not used one of the more recent builds of Ubuntu Touch on like the BQ, but the last time I had on my Nexus 5, which was about 4 months ago, 3 months ago, I felt personally like Firefox OS had less of a gap to close than Ubuntu Touch did at the time.
Yeah,
and so I could see them taking it. Plus, it's pretty lightweight. I do worry about them getting muddied, but I think when it comes to this particular market, I have such a hard time breaking out of the U.S.-centric view I have of the mobile market that it's hard for me to fully gauge how successful. My gut says this makes them just another B or C player, but I don't know for sure.
So you know why I think you say that you didn't feel like it had so much of a gap to close? Because I think that is because Firefox from the get-go has said, listen, all we have basically done is put a web browser on a phone, and your apps are simply just HTML5 apps. Now, when you do that, when you create that box and you define that up front, it eliminates a lot of expectations. You don't bother going to look for a mail client. It doesn't have a mail client. Does it have a Telegram client? You don't look for those things because you either know if that exists as an HTML5 app or it doesn't. And then in the back of your mind, you also know that because it's HTML5, it's worth it for a developer to develop an app for that platform because it'll run on run on everything. So I think because of the way they structured themselves and the way they position themselves, I think it allows us to give them a little bit more slack. And if you move away, and I'm not saying they're going away from the concept of HTML5, but if they start to move focus from that, they probably open themselves up to more criticism. Yeah, at least that would be my concern.
But if you could get a few core Firefox apps on there, or Android apps on there, we'll wait and see, I guess. It sounds like we'll probably be more to hear about, and it sounds like you and I are going to have. We often run into folks from the Mozilla Foundation when we go to conferences, so we're going to have questions. We'll ask them when we see them and just find out what's going on. We've talked about Core OS. I don't know what to make about this Intel announcement. Intel has announced Clear Linux, a new container-based Linux distribution from Intel, the people that make your CPU, probably. It's in a detailed article at lwn.net. Intel engineer described the aim to build a container system where one can use the isolation of a virtual machine technology along with the benefit of containers. The resulting system is Clear Containers. It uses the Linux kernel native KVM hypervisor, but runs in such a way that it avoids most of the startup time overhead typically associated with spinning up a KVM instance. Intel also claims it can leverage systemd and a few kernel-level memory organization tricks to slim down and speed up other processes even further. Other aspects of Clear Linux also harken back to CoreOS's roots in not only containers, but also system management. Instead of delivering system software as a slew of hundreds of individual update packages, each edition of Clear Linux, including all its bundled software, is delivered as a single monolithic unit, kind of like Ubuntu Snappy. Intel says this has an advantage. With the Clear Linux OS, there is one single number that is sufficient to describe the version of the software on the server. Now, that said, any updates pushed to the system are done via binary delta technology, so updates to a given version can only contain changes, not an entire new copy of Clear Linux. Now, here's the catch, and I don't know what to make of this. Intel says that it's unlikely that Clear Linux is going to be adopted rapidly into production in a way that CoreOS has been, but rather to serve as a way to demonstrate individual OS technologies that could be re-implemented in software. I don't know what to make about this, but what I do know is they have done some crazy wizard magic to KVM, and they're using I read the LWN article. They're using systemd, and they're bypassing so much stuff of the regular Linux stack. Basically, it's systemd in the kernel. They don't even pretend to be on any hardware, even though they're using KVM. They don't like front like as a virtual machine, a hardware. They completely bypass any bootloader or anything like that. The KVM, I don't know exactly how, but KVM itself directly boots the Linux kernel and uses systemd to manage all of the services. And so they're able to get total system isolation using KVM, so you don't have the security concerns of Docker. They've managed to reduce the startup time, which Intel figures is the number one issue with KVM, is that it's like 180 milliseconds versus 10 milliseconds to start a container. And so they collapse that startup time. They say they've improved security. About a virtual machine has about a 20 megabyte memory overhead versus a Docker's like 5 megabyte memory overhead. But if you're willing to make that trade, which they think they can get even lower, you get a lot of the benefits of containerization with all of the benefits of VM isolation built right by Intel. What do you think, Noah? You think it's interesting Intel's getting into this game?
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime a huge player in the IT market like Intel gets heavily invested in a Linux project, I mean, there's really no bad way to spin that, right? I mean, any which way you look at it, it's a good thing, even if it is to some degree competition to projects that we know and like, right? But also, who better to start making headway on things like virtualizations than the freaking manufacturer of the CPU? I mean, if anyone would know how the kernel could best talk to the CPU, it would be the guys who made the CPU.
And built in future technologies on top of their VT and VTD stuff that make it even better. Yeah, no, that is totally the exciting thing about it. Just a quick shout out to the Karita project. We had the developer on, the lead developer, a couple of weeks ago. And the project's Kickstarter has reached its goal, and we have new builds coming. And there's an update that we have linked in the show notes. Really cool. So they've reached the second stretch goal through Kickstarter and PayPal donations. And so as of that, they're delivering on brush packs, inking, painting filters, wash flow, normal maps, doodle brushes, experimental brushes, and large brushes, and an SFX pack. Really cool. And new builds have just come out. It's really neat to see the project not only getting the support, and they just improved PSD Photoshop file importing, saving, and exporting. Like huge PSD update. So that's really cool too. And an improvement on the OpenGL canvas under Linux. So a great update from the Karita project. And there's still a chance to back that Kickstarter. Let's go check in and see where they're at. I actually haven't looked for a few days. So they have 729 backers. They had a goal of $22,000, and they're at $25,000 now, with 9 days to go. And there's still some stretch goals available to make this really the most kick-ass drawing application on the Linux desktop. Maybe not just the Linux desktop, on any freaking desktop, really. And they want to make it faster than Photoshop, too, with your support. So check it out. They're Karita on Kickstarter. But Noah, with the news all done, let's go talk to Jeff from Bodhi Linux. We're about to bring Jeff on from the Bodhi Linux project. He's the project manager and lead developer of a very unique Linux distribution that probably doesn't get enough attention, so we're going to fix that. But first, I want to tell you about our segment sponsor, System 76 creators, originators, parents of machines born to run Linux. We have the System 76 Meerkat in studio right now. In fact, if you haven't listened to last week's Linux Unplugged, go check it out. I gave a review of the Meerkat and how it stood up as a Linux workstation under Ubuntu, using it for media production at Linux Fest Northwest, and now how it's running right now, actually. The very call we're doing these interviews on are running through the Meerkat. We're testing it under Arch as a media production machine in our studio. We'll give you a follow-up review on that soon. So I've given it a review as a workstation in Linux Unplugged, and then I'll give you a little take on how it runs as a media production machine. But I'm pretty impressed, and our interview today is being conducted over a System 76 Meerkat, and of course the website I'm displaying to you is over my Bonobo. When I want Linux rigs in production, I want them to run well because they have to be used every single day. I don't want to fight with my hardware and drivers. I want my Linux to work every single time. System76.com. Get lifetime Ubuntu support. Get machines, desktops, Linux laptops, and even servers designed to run Linux. System76.com. Tell them the Linux Action Show sent you. And a big thank you to System76 for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. Okay, Bodhi Linux. Oh, sorry. Bodhi Linux. Are you familiar with it? Maybe, maybe not. We haven't probably talked about it enough here on the big show. So we wanted to right that wrong. And so Jeff is joining us from the Bodhi Linux project. Jeff, welcome to the Linux Action Show. It's good to have you here.
It's great to be here.
So, Jeff, tell me a little bit about Bodhi Linux. What is it based on, and how long have you guys been around?
Well, first is that it's actually pronounced Bodhi, kind of like the word Jody.
That doesn't surprise me. So, Bodhi like Jody.
Bodhi is actually a synonym for the word Enlightenment, which is the desktop that we happen to use.
Awesome.
And Bodhi is a Linux distribution that's built on top of the Ubuntu long-term support releases, and that's something we've always done since our inception. I know recently Linux Mint moved to start doing something similar, but Bodhi's existed for almost 5 years now, and we've been doing that from the start, just kind of moving from LTS to LTS release. I see. We recently had our 3.0 release earlier this year, rebased on top of Ubuntu 14.04.
Okay. So then that'll be a long-term support version of Bodhi, basically, or Bodhi. Bodhi?
Yeah, basically, Bodhi doesn't have non-long-term support releases, so everything we do is long-term support.
And was that, did you sort of make it that way because that's just, in your opinion, a great platform to base it on? Does it make it easier for you to develop? Why Ubuntu 14.04?
I think focusing on long-term support releases makes things easier for both us as developers and our users as a whole. It makes the more of a rolling release platform as opposed to having to do like full distribution release upgrades every 6 months, which can complicate things if you have additional software sources and stuff like that.
Takes a ton of your time too, right?
Yeah, and troubleshooting issues if you have a full system upgrade can be kind of a pain. So we encourage our users to only reinstall every 2 years if they want to stay with the latest release, or obviously the long-term support means they get 5 years of support. So if it's working, just leave it alone.
So is Enlightenment good enough to be a desktop environment, a full-time desktop environment? Does it take a lot of tweaks on your part? I don't see a lot of distros that use Enlightenment as their desktop environment, but when I play with it here, it seems so smooth and elegant. What's the story there?
So one of the things that I think the Enlightenment team kind of has a hard time or misses on is their default configurations aren't super sane, which that combined with the fact that they really lacked a structured release cycle for a long time means that a lot of distributions really didn't integrate it. I mean, even if you look at the latest release of Ubuntu, like they don't have the latest version of Enlightenment in the distribution repositories.
Right. And so is Enlightenment approachable for, say, more average users, or is it something you consider to be more of a more advanced user's desktop environment? What's your take on that? Is Bodhi Linux, when you created it, do you see it as Linux for everyone, or do you see it as for Linux experts?
I see it as Linux that is scalable to what your specific needs are. We try not to assume things about our users. We assume that our users are kind of smart enough to do things for themselves, and we provide the tools for them to get where they need to go regardless of their ability levels.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. So it seems to me that the Linux distributions that tend to have the most success are the ones that fill a specific niche. And I'm curious, what if any is the specific focus that Bodhi works towards?
So we kind of call ourselves the minimalist Enlightened Linux distribution. We kind of aim to fill a hole in between distributions like Arch and Gentoo that give you almost nothing to start with and expect you to install everything, and distributions like Mint, or even ones that install lots of different software by default, where they assume to make all of the choices for you. We basically give you what is essentially a bare bones, sane GUI to install the applications that you need for your specific tasks on top of it.
Would you argue that Bodhi is a Linux distribution that would be well suited for low-powered hardware?
I would definitely say, and in fact, we have a specific release ISO image that supports non-PAE hardware, even on our 14.04 base. So it scales from low-end hardware all the way up to the higher-end hardware.
Jeff, what are the minimum system requirements for the distro?
So for our release that's aimed at older hardware with the non-PAE release, the minimum requirements are probably somewhere around a 1 gigahertz processor, and for an ideal experience, 256 megs of RAM, but I have installed it to 128 megs before.
Now, if I'm correct, am I right in that the Enlightenment desktop environment's graphical effects are CPU rendered? Or are they GPU rendered?
It depends on your hardware, what your hardware supports. It has both options.
Okay. Very cool. And I'm curious, I don't follow Enlightenment very closely, but I understand there was a decision to move back to E17 at one point. Am I correct in that? Can you explain that?
So recently, it was, I believe last month, we announced that we are going to be forking the Enlightenment 17 desktop, similar to how people forked GNOME 2 into Mate and KDE 3.5 into Trinity. Fascinating. And one of the reasons for that is one of the differences between our non-PAE disk and our normal standard release is that the non-PAE disk still uses the E17 desktop just because it's more resource friendly, and the compositing requirements on the E18 Plus desktops make it unable to run as effectively on older hardware.
So you are going to be taking on a rather large endeavor then if you're going to be forking that. Do you feel that that's going to be a big effort, sort of like the Mate project has become? Are you worried about that at all?
I don't think it's going to be that sizable of an investment, and the reason why I say that is because the E17 desktop is already very sane and usable as it is in its current state. So basically, we're just going to be incorporating some of the sane default configurations that Bodhi has for Enlightenment and has always had into the default of the desktop, as well as fixing a few of the bugs that were there and were fixed in future releases and backporting them to E17.
Right. And so I also understand, and this is one of the reasons I've actually I downloaded Bodhi, right? Am I saying that right? Bodhi. Bodhi. Sorry, now I'm confused. But one of the reasons I downloaded Bodhi this morning is I wanted to check out. I think it's called the eStore. It's like a front end to installing applications. Can you tell me about this? And is it something unique that you guys have written specifically for the distro?
So the software that powers the online app center, we call it, is just apt.url. It's a software that Ubuntu developed for installing things clickable through the browser. If you're familiar with the GetDeb website, that uses that same kind of technology to install applications. And basically, it just allows the user to have the web browser call the package manager to install software.
So there's not necessarily any, it doesn't require any desktop app. It's all just using the front end on the website. There's no program you have to maintain on the desktop. That's nice.
Exactly. Great. And it fits in with our minimalist approach of not installing extra software on your computer by default.
Yeah.
And it's a nice middle ground for people that don't know what they're looking for, that we have a lot of newer users looking to install Bodhi on older hardware. And this kind of gives them focused choices for different specific tasks that they're looking to do on their computer.
I love this. I mean, you've got user votes and ratings here. I mean, this is honestly a better experience than the Software Center on default Ubuntu. So I think it's smart that you guys went web. Good move.
So dovetailing onto that, it seems to me that a lot of people, when they go to look for applications, one of the biggest things I see from new users is they say, "Well, I went to the web, I went on the internet and I searched for this particular application and I couldn't find it, and so I wasn't able to get it installed on my computer." And of course, a lot of times they're using generic terms. But I wonder if you were to brand Bodhi and that's all they knew that they had installed, if they were to go out to the internet and look for Firefox for Bodhi, if it would then they can find a link and then just click on that big install button rather than find links to a bunch of blog posts or forum posts of people that had problems installing a specific application. Now they just get that install button. I wonder if that wouldn't smooth the experience. I don't know. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I definitely think that's one of our goals. The initial idea behind the App Center was that users are very familiar with searching for software on their cell phone. So if they can click install on their Android or iOS device, they can hit install on the website and it works just fine. One of the big advantages I think our App Center has, as opposed to something like the Ubuntu Software Center, is that our goal...
Hold on. I think we lost his audio there. Stand by. Oh, sorry, Jeff. Your audio cut out. Say again. Your goal.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you. We heard you cut out at our goal. Go ahead.
Our goal was to create something that's kind of focused in our choices as opposed to having everything listed there as like the Ubuntu Software Center does, because I think having too many choices like that for very new users, which is what the App Center is designed for, is can cause confusion and not sure what they're supposed to install. And it's honestly, obviously, we don't expect power users to use this website.
Jeff, the take I get away from it is a very kind of clean experience when I look at it. I mean, I walked away with I feel like I go here, web browsers. Yeah, it's only Chromium and Firefox, but in a lot of ways, I've recently switched my wife over to Linux, and I was just thinking about having her browse this. This is way more approachable for her.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people are scared by choices. That's one of the things people like, there's a million desktops, there's a million distros, I don't know what to pick. So when they do finally land on Bodhi, we want them to, have their choices be easier for them to find. So
I don't know if you've really had a lot of time to reflect on this, but one of the things that's been in the headlines a lot recently is Canonical has a lot of things going on. There's rumors now of an IPO, which could have a great impact on the long-term focus on the desktop. There's the talk about transition to Snappy and Snappy packages, which could have a pretty big impact on derivative distributions. And so I'm curious if you're watching this with some amount of anxiety, or are you kind of thinking whatever happens, you're going to be able to roll with it. What's your current thought on when you're sort of dependent on such an important project like Ubuntu, when so much of their future appears to be up in the air right now, and at least in a big transition?
So I actually wrote a short blog post. I maintain a small technology blog about Snappy packages and what I think about them as a whole. But basically, I think the concept of Snappy packages is awesome. I think it's a push in a direction that not only packaging software for developers, but also getting software as end users could kind of be good for Linux as a whole. In terms of what it means for Linux distributions like Bodhi, the fact that we only focus on the LTS releases for Ubuntu, and Ubuntu has already said that the default for 16.04 will be deb-based, that means in terms of Bodhi transitioning because of Snappy packages, we don't have to really evaluate and make that decision until 2018 when we rebase on 18.04 for that LTS.
Sure. And I would assume by that point, there's going to be, a lot of feedback in the market about how it's working, a lot you can watch. So you have a pretty good position then to sort of sit back and see where it goes. But it sounds like
Correct.
You may be optimistic about it.
No, definitely. And I'm always very open to change. In fact, I think people that use Linux and open source software that aren't open to change are kind of hypocritical because, you got here because you were looking for something different, looking for something better. So if we don't keep trying to innovate, we're never going to get better than what we currently have.
I can't argue with that. Noah, did you have any other questions for Jeff?
I guess the only remaining question is, do you have an idea of what of some exciting things that might be coming to Bodhi or things that we can look forward to?
Well, the Moksha desktop project that we're going to be working on,
yes.
The forking of E17 and trying to make some small improvements to it, that's definitely something that I know a lot of our user base has been looking forward to. When we posted about that, the resounding feedback that we got from people was that they weren't super happy with E19 and the releases after E17, and they had either stopped using Bodhi altogether or they had, rolled back to using E17 on Bodhi, which actually I'm using E17 on Bodhi, so I understand that decision.
Nice. And so the project continues on. And can you just to sort of wrap up? I'm trying to just place it in my head. How many folks are working on Bodhi Linux? Is it mostly just yourself, or is there a team? Can you give me some perspective?
We definitely have a small team here. I'm the primary, what I would refer to as developer. I kind of keep everything organized and flowing, but we have a person that designs our website. We have 2 or 3 people that do system administration for our servers. We have another guy that does graphics design. We have 2 or 3 other people that regularly contribute code both to the Enlightenment desktop and now to Moksha itself, as well as develop our small custom tools like EepData and other things like that.
Well, it's I remember the first time I played with Enlightenment, I remember thinking, oh, desktops can be sort of like the movies. Like, that was my first, I was like, this got like a Hollywood desktop. And you summed it up so well at the beginning of the chat where you said a lot of times the defaults are a little crazy and they're not very approachable. And one of the things I love about what you've done with Enlightenment is you've made it sort of shine its best. Like, when I download it, I feel like there's this parallel universe of Linux desktop development that's been going on that we don't really talk a lot about, but it's still extremely impressive. And so the fact that you bring that to people on top of Ubuntu, which means I don't have to worry about my software compatibility. I know I'm still going to have all my PPAs. I know Canonical is going to support LTS for 5 years, and et cetera, et cetera. It makes it a very approachable landing place to try something very fun and elegant without having to go too far out on a branch and way out there in weirdo land. You can still find all the guides, all the how-tos, all the stuff. So it's a really great combination you guys are working on. So definitely keep it up. I've downloaded the ISO, and I'm going to be trying it out this next week. I'm really excited to try it. So thanks for coming on the show.
Awesome. One last thing I just want to mention is that one of the things we really try to do is have good documentation with our release,
Good
both
man.
just because EE itself doesn't have a lot of great documentation following it. So if you notice when you first start the disk, you get that quick start guide that pops up, which a lot of questions users have specific to E17 and Enlightenment in general are covered in that. So if you hit any issues, I would definitely recommend checking that out, as well as our wiki page has a lot of great
It sounds
content on
like
it.
if documentation is a priority, it sounds like a pretty solid way maybe for folks to start contributing initially to the project would be through documentation as well, and then maybe work their way in and help out further from there. That could could be a nice way.
Yeah, definitely. I always tell people there's a lot more ways to contribute to open source than just, writing code and reviewing code. There's lots of different, like I mentioned, we have system administrators and web developers and graphics designers, etc.
I have a special appreciation for projects that take the documentation seriously, because then that means they take that kind of contribution seriously, which is a good introduction to open source development. So that's even cooler. You guys can check it out. We'll have links in the show notes as well as video reviews, a couple of cool videos that have been posted up on YouTube that showcase the distribution, and we'll have links to the website and all of that good stuff. So Jeff, keep up the great work. And that brings us to the end of this week's show, but we do have some email and other items to follow up on before we go. So let's jump into the emails first, and then we have, I got some big news. Alan has some big news. Noah probably has some news. Who knows? I don't know. But
I can come up with something.
Yeah, come up with something. But first, let's read Jason's email. Jason writes in, "Hello, Noah and Chris. I've been watching the show for a while, and I saw how super pissed you are at the Oculus Rift and how they're bypassing Linux. While it's understandable that you should not pass up Linux, your comments about Carmack sounded like you based it on his public persona, i.e. the guy with the big ego, and how he doesn't like Linux. Well, and his many public comments about it, yeah. Well, it's true that he's not the biggest fan of Linux. He does think that open source projects are a great idea. Right. And he includes a link for a quick one, which I think we actually played that video on the show. He says he talked about Android OS and how it would make it leaps and bounds over the course of 3 years. He said that writing code for Android isn't so bad, and he likes how he can easily get the code. He also said that it was a great idea by Google to make the OS free. So even though Android has strayed far from its roots over the last couple of years, he isn't the biggest fan of Linux. Carmack is still trying to give this open source stuff a chance. Okay. I'm it's hard for me to reconcile that, but I hope that is true. Noah, you had a email that came in asking about your Sony P series. What, were you laughing at me?
Yeah. No, I
okay.
He, let's see here. It's Dan writes in and he says, Chris and Noah, I just watched the last episode 365, the emulation game. Great show. I feel exactly like Noah. I too wish my Android phone ran some sort of form of pure Linux. And I've been looking into the Meizu MX4 Ubuntu phone as well. But it looks like that product won't be in the USA for quite a while.
Right.
I feel like there is a conspiracy from major telcos in the US to keep us from having a pure Linux phone. I like Noah's purchase of the Sony Vaio P series that look great, but the video performance is kind of a deal breaker for me. Probably the single core Atom doesn't have enough processing power, and $300 seems kind of steep for a 5-year-old portable. For now, I'll be using an Asus EEE-PC 1015px netbook, which is actually pretty, believe it or not, a dual-core 64-bit solution to the same problem. Having a 10-inch screen, it's slightly larger than the Sony, and you're definitely not going to fit it into your pocket. However, the computer is powered by an Atom N570 processor and has 2 gigabytes of RAM, to which I recently replaced its old rotating drive with Intel 120 gig SSD. It's still portable enough for me for taking on hiking trips and day trips with the family, etc. The Asus 1015px works well out of the box with Xubuntu 1404, wireless works, sound works. I did have a small issue with the function F5 and F6 key hot controlled the screen brightness, but there's an ACPI backlight command that added to a given file that he lists and says, plus an extra tiny config file in user share x11 xorg.conf.d directory, which had fixed the issue for the hotkeys. Now they work like they're supposed to. I enjoy my Asus netbook with Xubuntu 14. I can play most videos using VLC, including DVDs of it with a external slim DVD reader, and even YouTube plays flawlessly. It's how I watch LAS, Unfilter, and BSD now. I have purchased 3 1015px units in the last 12 months. They're roughly $125 with a good deal with no dents or scratches. Now, Dan, here's the thing. I actually did not anticipate how much of a problem the no video was going to be.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so at first I was like, video? How much time do I have to sit and watch videos anyway?
As a quick reference, what we're referring to is last episode, Noah showed a really sweet, like, tiny Ultrabook Linux rig that, like, the main drawback was video choppy playback, right?
Right. Well, basically non-existent video playback. It's that choppy. But so at first I was like, I don't have time to sit and watch videos. What do I need videos for? Well, I was sitting last night going through show notes, and can I watch the videos in the pics? No, I can't watch them because I can't do that.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other thing is too, and this I have a feeling can be remedied just by replacing it, but the battery life is it turns out that 4 or 5 hours just isn't going to be enough. So I'm still working through. It still has not left my side. It's still been in my backpack the entire time because it's still still way more convenient to take that into a restaurant and set it down just in case I need it than it is to haul my stupid computer bag. So I'll still be hanging on to it, but it definitely, more so. And then I was thinking about it. One of the other things I wanted to use it was on the airlines. They take your laptop away during takeoff and landing, but you can use tablets. So I was hoping I could use that little portable. Well, it turns out it's useless because I can't really read on a screen that small unless I'm holding it right up to my face, and I'm not going to be watching videos apparently. So what am I supposed to do with it while I'm on a plane with no internet?
So Dan's solution was the EEE PC 1015PX.
Yeah.
But it's not as portable.
I'm looking to actually.
It's not as portable, but it does seem like a pretty nice rig for him.
I bet it's no less portable than a tablet though.
Yeah.
Because it's 10-inch, right?
All right, let's do the next email. Or do we have? Yeah, we do. One more email. I'll read this one. It comes in from WTF HIW. Probably, what would we say? WTF hell in something? I'm not sure. Concerning the Magwell HDMI problems, the disconnects you're having from your Magwell units are caused by a change made in the Video for Linux driver. So on the pre-show last week, we were having a problem with our HDMI capture, and so he says there's good news. The libdevice VL for Linux patch was merged into FFmpeg's master branch a little over a week ago on Arch, Antergos, and Manjaro. If you don't want to wait for the next official FFmpeg build, you can get it from the AUR. So it's funny because there is some advantages to rolling Linux in production for things like these kind of fixes. And a lot of people in the feedback last week had asked us, couldn't you use CentOS or Debian, a nice, stable Linux distribution for media production? And one of my responses was, unfortunately, we're extremely dependent on things like FFmpeg. And in fact, that even in some cases makes Ubuntu hard to use. So this was a really good note for us to know. And I really appreciate WTF keeping us up on the latest developments there. And the good news is, I think we resolved some of the hardware issues. Noah's right now on a System 76 Meerkat, and I've replaced the Magewell capture card with a newer version that's metal. It's really nice. It's a great HDMI capture device to use under Linux. If you just want, bring in an HDMI device, be it like your Xbox, PS4, 3, whatever, or camera, Magewell, I think is a great way to do it.
Because this continues to come up, if we haven't talked about this enough, basically what it does is it appears to your system as a Video for Linux device. So it looks just like a webcam would look. So you get a /dev/video0/video1. So on the portable broadcast machine, I've got 3 of them plugged in, and so I get dev0, video 0, video 1, video 2, and I can structure those just like I would in any application that would use a webcam. So Skype, it works just fine with. Cheese, it works just fine with. Of course, the applications we use like Jitsi and OBS works just fine with. There it is up on the screen. So they're available $299, available with Amazon Prime, and a totally native Linux compatible solution for capturing 1080p, and I think it does, am I wrong to say it does up to 60 frames per second?
I believe you are correct, sir, if you have USB 3.0. Yeah. And if you don't, that's fine. You can actually use it over USB 2. I don't know if it does 60, but and it just, you plug it in and Linux immediately, every device, Cheese, Skype, Jitsi, Hangouts, everything sees it. It just shows up as a Linux device. It's the Magwell. It's a little expensive, but it works really well. Hey, so that's the emails. Thank you very much. Go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact to send in your email, or start a thread at linuxactionshow.reddit.com. ZFS is a topic we bring up from time to time, and now we can all say we know the guy who wrote the book on ZFS. Alan Jude, ladies and gentlemen's book on ZFS is out. You can get it at zfsbook.com. It's FreeBSD, mastery of ZFS, as Alan would say it. You know, picking the right hardware, arranging your storage configuration, configuring the datasets, repairing it, expanding storage, understanding snapshots, understanding how copy on write works, optimizing ZFS, and of course, customizing FreeBSD to work best with ZFS. But there's tons of stuff in there even us Linux users could take advantage of. So it's zfsbook.com. Congratulations to Mr. Alan Jude, host of the TechSnap program. He co-wrote it with Michael Lucas, I believe, and they worked very hard on it. And Alan has truly become one of the leading experts on ZFS, which is amazing when you think of what an important technology that is. To know the guy that's writing the book on it's pretty awesome. Now, you Linux users, don't worry, you're not left out. Longtime friend of the show, Jed, who we always see at Linux Fest Northwest and managed to shoot us in the face with Nerf darts, just had an interview on episode 90 of the BSD Now program, and his entire interview was about how he uses ZFS as his root file system under Linux. And so they shot it at Linux Fest Northwest, producer Q5Sys holding the camera the entire time like a champ, and Jed tells his story about using ZFS on Linux in production. It's a great interview in episode 90 of the BSD Now program, and congratulations to Alan for ZFSbook.com. You guys are winning. It's really cool. And I'm definitely checking out Jed's interview. because that's gonna that was a long interview, and when I walked by, there was some really good deets coming out. Now, one last thing, Noah, before we run, maybe I should have put this towards the top of the show, but over the weekend, I did a whole bunch of Twitter account rearranging, and my official Twitter account that you've probably been following for a while, if you follow me, has now been handed over to the network. It's called Jupiter Signal, and if you were following me, you're already following it. You don't have to do anything different. Though I do have a new account. It's the same bat channel, but you're just not following it. You go to twitter.com/ChrisLAS, and you can. That'll be my personal feed. So I'll do work-related stuff on the Jupiter Signal feed, personal-related stuff on Chris LAS. Chris LAS is essentially a new account, but I just took my old name, so it doesn't really have any followers or anything like that. So if you want to follow my personal account, twitter.com/ChrisLAS. If you want to follow the official Jupiter Broadcasting account, twitter.com/Jupiter Signal. And if you want to follow Noah, he's twitter.com/Kernel Linux. There you go. So I'm still Chris LAS. It's just under a new account, and I don't have any followers. And the network is now Jupiter Signal because we renamed my old Chris LAS account. Does that all make sense? Was I clear?
That makes perfect sense.
Okay. Yeah.
So follow the network at Jupiter Signal. Follow Chris at Chris LAS.
Yeah, because I realized that like 90% of my tweets were all network related anyways, but then people would tweet me personal stuff. And so I thought, you know what, I should just do a little shift around, and so that's what we did.
Plus, then when people ask, is Jupiter Broadcasting on Twitter, you can say...
At Jupiter Signal. Boom. Yep. And go find Noah's day job at altaspeed.com. You might just find his company could provide something you need, altaspeed.com. And don't forget, we do this show live over jblive.tv, 10 a.m. Pacific. Go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar to automatically get that converted to your local time. And last, but absolutely not least, we'd love your contributions at linuxactionshow.reddit.com. News, app picks, Runs Linux. We had a great one this week from the subreddit. Discussion threads. Your votes and comments on stories make a huge difference. Please do those over at linuxactionshow.reddit.com. It's part of our show that's sort of like the source code that you get to tweak and poke at. Then we really do kind of take it in, and it makes a better show all together. And also being here live helps quite a bit. But the show is available on demand in RSS feeds for audio and video and torrent as well. If you want to help defer some of our bandwidth costs, you can find all of those links in the show notes. Just go to jupiterbroadcasting.com, find the recent episode of Linux Action Show, scroll right down past the download links, and boom! There's all those links. Hey, Noah, one more thing before we go. I have a little tease for you. Right here. You see this?
Now, it's like Christmas.
If all goes according to plan, Noah's going to be in studio next week. And when Noah's in studio, we're going to hook this up. This is something that I think could be really useful for Linux users that need to get really consistent video capture out of their Linux computer. Yeah, you know what this is.
I know what it is.
Yeah, that's right.
So
this is one of the issues we have a lot is when like you launch a game and it changes your resolution on your Linux box, it changes the resolution, it breaks video capture. And then your video capture stuff breaks. But so many games under Linux and stuff change the screen resolution. So this is a tiny little box that has DVI in on one end and DVI out on the other, and we'll do a HDMI converter, which I think it actually shipped with. And it will send a consistent signal to our capture, regardless of whatever the Linux machine puts out. So for those of you at conferences that have projectors and things like that, you could put one, or TVs, you can put one of these in front of the projector, and it will always send a consistent signal to the projector, regardless of what the user is sending into the box, and it does the conversion for you. So it is called the Geffen or Jiffen. How do you say it, Noah?
I don't know, but essentially it sends an EDID a consistent EDID profile across the HDMI stream. Yeah. So when your identifier changes on the client or on the input side, the receiving side doesn't notice. Now, the only time that would be bad or that would be unbeneficial is you mentioned using it with TVs. Sometimes TVs use that EDID profile to determine how to space out how to present that image.
Sure.
And so if you set an EDID profile for, like, let's say whatever the one is that says, I'm 16 by 9 and I'm stretched out all the way, it won't necessarily overscan or underscan because it doesn't know what's being connected to it. That's my understanding.
I love it. So we're going to be playing with that in studio next week when Noah's here, and it's just one more thing we're doing to make the Linux media process a little smoother, a little more consistent as we move more and more stuff over to Linux. There's sometimes little hardware solutions we come up with, and then later on we'll incorporate into content for you guys, and when you ask us how to make some of this stuff work, we'll have a pretty solid answer for you. But that brings us to the end of this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week.
I was asking about my pen. It is a pen.
It is A pen. It is.
I believe if you look carefully, you'll find that you have the same pen.
After close examination, I agreed with Noah. I do, in fact, have the same pen.
The same pen. Yeah.
We have the same background, the same pen. It doesn't seem like we're in the same location.
So exciting. Maybe I can start teasing this. You guys want to see something cool? You guys want to see something amazing? Check this out. This is the new mobile broadcasting rig. Let's see if I... Oh, God, it's heavy. All right. This is the new mobile broadcasting rig. So I don't know how to get that in the camera shot. You guys can see that? Can you see that? Wonderful. Okay. Very heavy. Very mobile, very portable. So basically, from top to bottom, first there is a, if you guys saw that that top little blade, and what that is it has all the ports that we need. So it has the HDMI for the cameras, it has the USB port for the C920s. It's got an Ethernet jack, or RJ45 jack. So basically, every place we go, it's a different networking setup. So all of the internal stuff will be the same for us, and then there's just one jack, and we plug that Cat5 cable in, whatever the facility gives us, and then the whole box has networking, as well as a little pigtail to come out to Chris's laptop, so he has HDMI and wired. Then below that, we have the audio compressor, and then below that is the headphone amplifier, headphone splitter, and audio interface. And then below that is the power distribution unit, and then below that is the actual computer.